Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Gosztola. I'm the managing editor for Shadowproof.com. One thing we've been covering at Shadowproof are these pandemic primaries, or I used to call them the coronavirus primaries, but I now prefer the alliteration. What I'm talking about are these states that, and there's only a few of them, fortunately, but these states that chose to push on and hold elections during the coronavirus outbreak. We have a major development here because Bernie Sanders has come out against holding the Wisconsin primary on April 7th. And I want to address that and discuss what is going on here in this state and some of the issues around it. But I must say that I have been one of these people who turned into an advocate against holding these primaries. I put together an open letter that was signed by over 2,500 people before the March 17 primary. I'm an Illinois resident. I understood the risks that were going to be existent if Illinois residents came out to vote on March 17th, and yet J.B. Pritzker and the state of Illinois pushed on withholding that primary, and we really don't know the extent to which community spread occurred as a result. We also saw the primaries go on in the state of Florida, which is controlled by a Republican governor, and then in Arizona, there was the Secretary of State who was actually a Democrat who pushed on. But I understand that a lot of 75 to 80%, somewhere around that, was done vote by mail. But they still had people going out during this outbreak to vote in person. And that's what I object to, is going out to vote in person. And that's the issue. This defies CDC guidance at a time when everyone's being told to stay at home. You are asking people to go out and vote. You're putting people in a predicament where they are having to choose whether to go vote and put themselves at risk or stay at home, and then they can't do their constitutional duty, or they can't do what they feel like they're obligated to do, go out and vote for officials. So we've been told that Wisconsin is expanding mail-in ballots and making it possible for everyone to vote, but they don't have a system for doing that. This isn't Oregon. This isn't Washington State. This is not a state that does that. They don't have a system for simply, in a matter of days, expanding their absentee ballot system so that they can send ballots to everyone. There's no guarantee that everyone who wants to participate will be able to participate. So that's the issue. That's why we need to see a delay here from Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers and other officials. But right now we've got the Democrats, including this Wisconsin governor. You've got the GOP that controls the state legislature, and you've got the Wisconsin Elections Commission co-signing what amounts to massive disenfranchisement of voters. We know that so far there's only been around 1.2 or 1.3 million, if that, of absentee ballots that have been returned. So people have voted, and we can expect that voting will continue with ballots trickling in. But then there's the people who made requests that maybe have not been filled yet, and the issue of whether those are going to be postmarked in time to be counted, and if all of those requests are going to be filled by state officials. You have Bernie Sanders coming out on April 1st saying that people should not be forced to put their lives on the line to vote, which is why 15 states, so currently you have 15 states, there are no states in this month of April that are holding their primary and expecting or encouraging or asking people to go out in person and vote. They recognize that those are there's public health risk to doing that. And any primaries that are happening that might still be on the calendar, they're all going to be tabulating votes through the mail. This is why 15 states are now following the advice of public health experts and delaying their elections. Bernie continues, we urge Wisconsin to join them. The state should delay Tuesday's vote, extend early voting, and work to move entirely to vote by mail. While we wait for a decision, we urge our supporters to vote by mail. And as is implied in that statement, you can't overnight have a vote by mail system. It's going to take some time for all the officials to expand everything and have enough ballots to send out to people, everyone. And you ought to be sending it out to everyone who's registered to vote. The problem, though, in Wisconsin is they offer same-day voter registration. So there's people who are going to want to vote, who typically would have gone out to vote, who right now are finding themselves unable to participate. And so there needs to be an effort to include them. Now, what should Tony do? What should Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers be doing? It's this simple. It's really not that complicated. You can look to Ohio, which set the model for what a state like Wisconsin could do when you have Republicans who are in control. All Tony has to do is invoke some kind of emergency authority. This really hasn't happened before. I can't imagine Wisconsin or any other state has found themselves in the middle of a global pandemic trying to decide whether to proceed with a primary or not. And so you say that you have the emergency authority, and then you declare polling places to be health emergency risks if people were to gather in them. And quite easily, you're going to find that there would be 10 plus people in these polling places if the election was held. And then they would effectively be contributing to the community spread potentially. And so those are risks. You shut the places down so that people cannot gather in them. This is what we've done with schools. This is what we've done with non-essential businesses. This is what Tony can do. Rather than bringing in the National Guard to staff polling places because you find that you have 60% shortage of staff in many of these places, or you have 100 plus places where you just don't have any staff at all, you do this. You shut down the places. You go ahead and you make it an issue for the GOP. The GOP is not going to like this. They're counting on going forward with this primary because they know the voter disenfranchisement, or they're banking on the voter disenfranchisement benefiting them. And so they want those African American communities, those Latino communities, elderly populations to not be able to participate. They're hoping that they can win and gain some more control so that there can be more gerrymandering, so it can be helpful to them. And this is part of their agenda. So you don't co-sign this. If you want to have any credibility going forward when it comes to speaking about the issues of voter suppression, the Democrats can't co-sign this with Republicans. But we know time and time again that this tends to happen. They're awful at being opposition, being opponents. Democrats so often play the role of being part of an opposition party that's non-existent. I mean, they don't have it in them to be spineful. So we often call them spineless. And that's the case here, that Tony can easily take some kind of an action and flip it around. And that's what you do. You turn it around. You make it the GOP's problem. He needs to get this off his plate. His problem as governor has to be keeping people alive, keeping people safe, keeping people, giving them a way to cope, dealing with things like having freezes on rent, if that's something he wanted to do, or expanding access to Medicaid, or making sure that people have meals, people who are going hungry, finding ways to get resources, moratoriums on utility shutoffs, freeing prisoners, freeing detainees in jail. Those are the kinds of things that he has to deal with. He doesn't need to worry about an election. So you want to get that problem off your plate if you're Tony Evers, and then let the GOP go to court. Let them sue. And then we can, in the media, read all of these headlines about why the GOP say that the Democrats are out of line to cancel this primary, and then let them defend having this primary during the coronavirus outbreak. Let them defend doing this when cases have not peaked. Let them defend doing it when they're building field hospitals in Wisconsin because they expect the next 1 to 2 weeks to be so dire, to be have such an intensification of the outbreak in the state of Wisconsin. And this is what we're seeing in states across the country. It's why in the past week we've seen Virginia and Maryland adopt stay-at-home orders, and now Florida, which we couldn't get to take this seriously. We couldn't get DeSantis to care up to this point, but now there's a stay-at-home order there from Ron DeSantis. So Wisconsin knows that the next couple of weeks are going to be absolutely atrocious for people. They're going to be some of the roughest of times, and it's going to coincide with holding this primary. So you put the problem into the hands of the GOP and let them decide what to do. Are you really going to be a Republican Party that says that people need to go out and risk their lives to vote? Are you going to really stand behind disenfranchising voters when a majority of the state says that this should not go forward? Or are you going to do the sensible thing? Because we've seen Republicans be sensible. There's a coal baron who runs the state of West Virginia who just moved the primary that was scheduled in May to June 9th. And he did so because he wants seniors to be able to participate without fear of contracting the virus. And he also knows that there will be a higher turnout if they move the primary to June 9th. That's sensible. He's a Republican governor. He's a coal industry baron kind of a political leader. And so this is what someone who's Republican has done. Mike DeWine was a Republican in Ohio, but you've got a Democrat in Tony Evers who is not showing any leadership. And at the same time, you've got Joe Biden's campaign that is completely silent, that acts like people have always been willing to go out and make sacrifices in wartime. And so Americans can go sacrifice and go vote during wartime, and they should. What people should do is go find the number for Evers's office. Go onto the Wisconsin government website, find Tony Evers's number, leave him a voicemail, or send an email. Put this on the record. Get emails into the inbox of the government. It'll be there. If they make the wrong decision, they won't be able to say that they weren't warned that this was a bad idea when this becomes a complete and total mess on Tuesday, which it will if they push forward with having this primary. And that call the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Tell them that they're making a bad choice. We all need to come. I know from experience here in Illinois, I saw what happened in Chicago. I observed very closely what was happening with people being packed into poorly ventilated rooms on the south side and the southwest side. It's going to affect Latino communities and African American communities the worst. And Tony Evers has already said in Milwaukee that it's a crisis within a crisis among the African American population. Milwaukee's one of the areas that's having the hardest time trying to put on this primary. So what is Tony Evers doing, talking about the crisis moment in Wisconsin and at the same time pushing forward with this primary? It's unconscionable. I don't think you can speak with credibility about the risks to people and at the same time push forward with this primary. And the simple answer is, again, just to reiterate, declare the polling places health emergency risks and then push forward. Let the GOP complain. Let them be the ones who say you're making the wrong choices. If you lose in the courts and the primary still happens, then it's on them. They own that. They own not allowing the maximum number of people to participate in a primary. But you get to clear your conscience. You get to get this off of your table. It's no longer your responsibility. That's the way it should be. That's what people in Wisconsin should find sensible. And the majority of people in Wisconsin say, change the date. So change the date to hold a pandemic primary. We don't need pandemic primaries in this country.